doing his thing.
Welcome to the EMN podcast, where philosophy meets disaster and uncomfortable truths meet the profession we call emergency management. This is not safe space thinking. This is the arena. Let's begin.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at in this fine world. But you may notice that Dan looks a lot different today. Hey, Andrew, welcome.
Good morning. Nice to join you, Todd.
Thanks for being here. And it's always nice to see you. And how are things over there on the East Coast today? I know it's a little cooler than. I'm in a sweater and I feel kind of like a wimp now that I'm here in California, and I'm talking to somebody that's in New York or New Jersey at least.
It's still very cold. It's still below freezing. And although we are expecting some warmer weather, and I think warmer weather for us is downright chilly for the folks out in California. So warmer, it looks like 40 to 50 degrees. And we have on a morning, it's not unusual to wake up those last couple of weeks and have it be around 20 degrees with the wind chill running around 7 to 8 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's rather cold.
There's a reason why I like being from New York, and that's my favorite part about it, because it's beautiful out here. Well, it's not beautiful. It's been cold and rainy, but that's all right. But we're not here to talk about the weather. Well, we could be talking about the weather. We're not necessarily here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about what does it mean when success breeds questions from the organization that you work for of whether what you're doing is worth the money or not, right? And I titled this "The Silent Failure Mode When Nothing Happens." And what I mean by this is when you go into, and I use law enforcement a lot in this example, is like when we do saturation patrols, and we don't catch anybody doing crime, right? And so the question is, was there no crime committed because there's no crime out there being committed? Was there no crime committed because there are so many police officers out there during that event that the bad guys didn't want to mess with it? And how do you prove a negative?
And that's a challenge, right? For people who work in the emergency management sphere, or even in business continuity or disaster recovery, is paying for that level of redundancy or recovery capabilities, response capabilities, right?
Absolutely. I mean, think about all the money and time and effort that we're putting into planning to make sure, and we'll go to the World Cup right now because this is some of the stuff I'm working on, right? And we got 16 cities in North America that are planning for a World Cup, and we're making it as safe and seamless as possible for all of the players, for the athletes, I should say, for the coaches, for the referees, for the visiting dignitaries, and for all the fans that are coming here from across the world to see a soccer game, or if you're from other places, football, right? Not American football, but football, right? So you come here to watch these things, and hopefully, right? The deal is we want this to be completely seamless, right? We want everybody to go home going, this is the best time of my life. Nothing happened, and it's a good thing. And as I tell people all the time, you do not want my day to be a busy day, because that means that's a terrible day for everybody else. But how do we justify, to some elected officials, the amount of money, the millions and millions and millions of dollars that are being spent on the security side when the silence of failure occurs? Or not the silence of success, I should say. And that's what I really should say.
Well, this is, so you bring up a great point, and I like the analogy, or actually bringing up the example of preparing for the European, or not European, what they call in Europe football, or the FIFA World Cup. And that is, it's much like American football. In American football, we watch, football games, or if you're a big football fan, you watch football games, and you have second and third string players Why? Because the players on the field often will get hurt at some point, right? You watch a play and how many players are walking off that field limping or can't get up, having a challenge getting up. Whether putting aside the dangers of the sport, you have that second and third string player and you're paying them on the payroll because you need that contingency to have that person go in. Otherwise, your team is basically going to fail. And at this stage, when we're getting into the playoffs, the health of those folks and their ability to respond is important in the same way that, your response capabilities and recovery capabilities in emergency management need to be there, because it's not something that you can just spin up with a magic wand and make appear. Those capabilities need to be maintained on a regular basis, right? And so for those extreme events, whether we're talking about emergency sheltering or redundant communications or recovering in the infrastructure realm, repairing roads, restoring electricity, those capabilities have to be there, right? And that mutual aid is important. What we learned from COVID is that we can't rely on that mutual aid at times.
Right.
So have to have that level of redundancy that's there. Otherwise, we're exhausting the resources that we have in responding on a regular basis.
And that's a really good example. If we go back to, mutual aid, we assume in our planning that there'll be some sort of mutual aid coming. It's one of our planning assumptions. And when we saw what happened with COVID, that, hey, everybody was on their own for a couple of years, realistically. There wasn't the white knight on a horse waving his flag, coming in. That wasn't occurring. What did that mean? And I think that really shook what our planning assumptions have to be. And realistically, the way I'm looking at it right now, my plan assumptions, I have removed mutual aid, not completely, but I don't rely upon it, right? And I'm thinking of the large scale earthquake here in Southern California, that if we have that 7.0 earthquake or whatever that can occur, say the Newport Inglewood, which runs underneath the city that I work for, there's the earthquake that occurred, the devastating earthquake, I think it was in 32 or 33, somewhere along that lines, that destroyed Long Beach. When we think about that type of earthquake that can come, I'm on my own because it's a regional event, and I'm not expecting mutual aid. So this is when I started having conversations with my community about capacity building and really getting into, and we've had this conversation a bazillion times, but having this going into the faith-based organizations, like the clubs, the business community out here, and talking to them about capacity building and them being prepared and ready to be on their own for a period of time after a disaster occurs, right? That this is the mindset that we have to have. And we need to remove that mindset that somebody's coming in to help us. Now, if they come, that's awesome, right? We can ask for it and hope for it, but let's plan for being on our own. And as I like to say, we plan for the worst case scenario that could occur, right? We can hope for the best, but we plan for the worst. And if other things come in, that's icing on the cake, and we can make things better. But if we plan for the best case scenario, then we're behind the eight ball as soon as the thing occurs. And that's where it comes into when we start planning for these things and nothing happens. When the city council starts looking at budgets, and they go, why are we putting all this money into preparedness programs? Like, how do we defend that? I know how I have an idea, but I'm asked that question in general. If anybody's out there listening, and I'd like to hear that in the comments as well, how do we defend putting money in for things that may or may not occur? I don't know. So go ahead, Andrew.
Well, I'm sure you have good justifications for it. I think one of those is, as people probably know who listen to your program on a regular basis, Englewood is where SoFi Stadium is located. And so you have, how many people does SoFi Stadium actually, how many
For
people can host?
for a football game, it's around
Yeah.
70,000.
There's 70,000 people. So you have 70,000 people plus your vendors, plus all support infrastructure, right? Surrounding businesses, all the other services that are involved there. And how many games, how many events a year? Probably over 100,
Oh, for
150.
sure, more than that.
Yeah. So, you are host to all of these people coming in, not to mention the fact, unless I'm stating this incorrectly, you will be a host site for the FIFA World Cup, correct?
Absolutely, 8 games. Yeah. Mhm.
8 games. So, those are things, that's not something, oh, let's figure this out on the day of, if I may quote Fran Tarkenton, every day is game day in Englewood. So that alone is part of that. Plus the local population, your residents, right? And the communities that are there. And I think if I just change gears a little bit here and switch the sort of vantage point, and I'm looking at the recent article that came out from Crisis Lab from Kyle King that I think you were part of, correct?
Yes.
In the group that was there. I had a chance to sort of briefly go through it. It's the podcast is in my file to listen to today, so I'll have a chance to listen to it in greater depth. But one of the things that I think that we're challenged with is, the perception of, we're not asking for unreasonable amounts, but that ounce of prevention is worth that pound of cure overall. And we need to think beyond of the walls that we're within, right? You have a limited number of staff in Englewood. Many other agencies, if you look at Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, that I've done work with, in exercises and training development, it's a small group compared to New York City. New York City has anywhere from about 100 to 180 staff. They're understaffed and under-resourced, so they don't have the number of people, certainly in terms of expertise, to focus on specific areas. So we need to move outside of that, as I think you're stating, to look at I know we talk about the whole of community, but the reality is, right, that whole of community are the faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, private sector organizations, the chambers of commerce. If I remember correctly, the name, in Los Angeles, it's I think it's called BICEP, is the organization that supports private organizations and companies and what they do. Major industries there in the LA area and Southern California. Those need to be supported and those need to be part of. And so, and you are no stranger to wildfires, power outages, heat emergencies, atmospheric rivers, and so on and so forth. So these hazards and threats are not going away, right? And so all of that wrapped up, you have to spread that. You've got to be the evangelist, if you will, and the center of excellence for helping to promote these things. And so the one thing that I think we are entering into is, and to again quote from that article, that ceiling that we're at in terms of our capacity. We only have a certain amount of capacity in terms of hours, in terms of resources, in terms of communication, to be able to build up the resilience that's there. But that, as we often say, we have the resources, they're just unevenly distributed that are out there. So, we want to provide food to people if there's an emergency. Well, there's food that's available. It just may not be available in the way that we need it, where we need it. So we just need to bring it to bear for the people that require it or need it. So that's just, I think, a little bit of thought in terms of the justification. It's there in front of us. It's staring us in the news on a regular basis. And that risk, or sometimes what's called the threatscape, if you will, but the risks that are out there are just multiplying on a regular basis.
When some of the things you just said kind of just reminded me, when you talk about food, for instance, we don't have to do it. I just talked about mutual aid. We don't have to do it alone, right? As far as food distribution. Matter of fact, I don't think we should, as a city, we should be doing it at all, because it's just not in our daily bailiwick, right? Now,
Hmm.
when I say that, we do, our city does have a Meals on Wheels program that we would still support and do, for the elderly, for people that we're already doing it for. But what we're doing is partnering with food service programs, again, faith-based organizations, with the food pantries that are here and with the LA Food Bank, to be able to get food. And we were looking at that, and had that conversation when SNAP was looking like it was going away, and how we were going to
Hmm.
be able to keep food distribution to people who needed it. And we had those conversations with those organizations leaning forward before it even took effect. Now,
Yep.
thank God it didn't impact us the way we thought it was going to, or potentially was going to. But the
Mhm.
idea there is we didn't wait for the crisis to occur. We had those conversations with those partners prior to anything occurring, and knowing who was doing and do what. And that was not a job that we were going to take on as a city, right? And again, this goes into that silent failure mode, as I call it, right? I call it a failure because I was kind of being sarcastic on the title here, but it's the idea of like, hey, this is something that's successful, but how do you prove it's successful, right? How do we prove that conversation that we had, and that we were ready to prepared for it, was ready to go, and was that time worth spent? And going back into the economic side of it, and I I was about to say a joke. It's a true story. My economics course I took when I was going through my master's program was the toughest course I've ever taken. I barely passed it. I think I got a courtesy C out of that class, to be honest.
Okay.
But it's the one I use on a regular basis. And man, and it, I think I learned the most in that class. My cost benefit analysis course, right? And I
Uh-huh.
use this on a daily basis.
Uh-huh.
And so going and saying, hey, look, for every dollar that we spend in community outreach, preparedness, and prevention programs, right, we're going to save. It depends on what you're looking at,
Right.
statistics, but between $7 to $20 in that realm, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Um, you choose the study that you want to look at, and how you want to justify it, but you can give that range in there, right? Um, who wouldn't invest in that? I mean, like if I told you, you give me $1 and I'm going to give you 7 back at a minimum, that's easy. That's an easy. That's the easiest thing to stand in front of your. And as I say, if I can stand in front of my residents and tell them that I am using tax dollars in an efficient and proper way that's going to be beneficial for the community, I'll take that argument all day long.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's as we started off talking about, it's hard to prove a negative in terms of something not happening, right? But at the same time, you don't have to go too far. You have neighbors close by, so to speak, closer than they are to us, at least. Unfortunately, we're looking at we're almost a year out from the Altadena and the Palisades,
Yeah.
park fires, horrible incidents that took place. But we shouldn't forget those things, right? Now, Englewood is not surrounded by forests, right? It's not a wild and urban interface, or WUI,
Not at
as you
all.
like to call it out west, right?
Mhm.
But you have other, as we just talked about, major stadium. You've got university that's there. Good university. You've got other major players that are in that area.
The
So
airport.
yeah, these are. What's
At
that?
the airport. I'm pointing. If you look out my window behind me, you can see the planes landing.
There you go. So you have that transportation infrastructure. You're not an island. You're surrounded by the other parts of the greater Los Angeles area. So it's not as if these risks are not there, and that cost of we look at cost of insurance, right? It's easy to look at and insure buildings, insure people, these sorts of things. But the systems, the communities, that glue that keeps us together, right? That's a harder thing to look at and to understand. And so rebuilding that, making that resilient, and making the ability to respond and recover quickly when there are these types of major incidents or disruptions that go beyond routine emergencies. I would also say, to me, having someone like you or like ourselves, who we think about these things on a regular basis, and we not only think about them, but we plan for them. So for the elected leaders who are there, mayors, city council, those sorts of things, we want to have people like yourself and others who are not only thinking about these things, but planning for them, engaging the community in planning, and actually are able to coordinate the resources to be able to respond effectively. And to me, having someone that's doing that helps those people sleep better at night. And then on top of that, also plan for the opportunities, because we want to look at the opportunities to plan for them, whether it's building new housing units, whether it's planning new infrastructure, building new parks, providing more resources to their constituents, whatever that is, as opposed to thinking about what am I going to do in case I do have major earthquake or we have a conflagration of fire in our community. That's where we come in, right? We coordinate, we look at the bigger picture of those applications of how those are going to, and how do we make sure A, that doesn't happen, and B, if it does, something does happen, because we're not able to basically prevent.
That reminds me of the hurricane last.
That was weird. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I was talking too much. I needed a commercial break.
We are gonna go to a commercial break in a second. I didn't mean to do that, Andrew, but my finger got trigger happy. Sorry, go finish your statement, and we'll go into commercial.
I was going to say that that return on investment aspect. So you look at return on investment in business, you look at return on investments for what we're investing in for either college education or a new home or a new car, whatever that might be, right? It's an opportunity. But we also don't think about the negative aspect of that is, we have to have car insurance. We have to have homeowners insurance. Why do we have to have car insurance and homeowners insurance? It's for those when those awful things happen that we need to be able to recover from and hopefully go on with our lives. Hopefully it's not, terrible. It's only a fender bender, or it's a minor, accident that would happen at home. Maybe but we're able to recover from those things, and they don't basically set us back tremendously. It's the same thing when it comes to town, city, state, whatever that is, that jurisdiction, to be able to respond and recover from things. It's sometimes easy to, when you've got blue sky situations, and I know right now it's kind of hard to argue that in California, because you've had your atmospheric rivers and terrible fires and things like that. And so, you can make that argument, but in the blue sky situations, when we're looking at money and resources are scarce, it's harder to make that argument, but the argument can still be made there.
No, absolutely. And I agree with you 100% on that, Andrew. And thanks for that. Hey, real quick, everybody, we're going to jump into not a commercial, but I know you all have stories to share. And that's one of the things that we want to do here at EMN is help you share your stories. But I want you to listen to this quick little ditty.
That reminds me of the hurricane last year.
Oh, I remember that. We were up for 3 days straight.
You've seen the chaos. You've made the calls. You've held the line. Now, it's time to share the story. Operational Tales is live, and EMN wants your real-life moments. The hard-won lessons, the inside jokes that saved the ship, the quiet wins that made all the difference. Write it raw. Keep it safe. Make it count. Because your story can teach, lift, and lead. Submit now on the Emergency Management Network's Substack and let your voice carry farther than the radio ever could.
I keep wanting to play that commercial, I guess.
It's a very good one.
Gotta keep my finger off that button. That's what I gotta do. But you know what, Andrew? You know what I forgot to do? And we'll do it right now after this break here. I forgot to really give you a full introduction, because I know you've been here on the show a couple times. I've been on your show, but why don't you introduce yourself? And I was excited to see you, and I forgot to introduce you.
That's quite all right. I thought I was doing a good impression of Dan Scott, but I may be lacking something in that department. So with all due respect and appreciation for Dan, my name is Andrew Boyarsky, and I'm president of Pinnacle Performance Management. We're a small consulting company that focuses on emergency response, recovery, business continuity, and also project management for emergency managers. I have a book out called Riding the Wave, Applying Project Management Science in the Field of Emergency Management, that is in Routledge Press. It's available wherever you decide to buy your books. I also have a podcast called Riding the Wave, Project Management for Emergency Management, that's part of the EOC Voices podcast network, alongside our other great voices like Todd DeVoe and others. And then in addition to that, I'm a writer on the EM network, where I publish an article about a month, every month. When I'm asked, I can write a little bit more upon request, so I do that as well. I do have a workshop that's based upon the book that you will see coming hopefully to a town or a location near you. And if you want some more information on that, I'm happy to talk. So and I have been working in emergency management for, I guess, far too long, at least a couple of decades at this point. My experience started in the 90s working in humanitarian relief, and then stretched into emergency management in the New York and New Jersey area, although I've done work for the esteemed Los Angeles Emergency Management Department, as well as for FEMA and others. So that's all about me.
Thanks, Andrew, for that. And I'm sorry I didn't put that in the beginning. You know what's wild is I remember I still feel like I am, like when we were like first starting in the field and we're young and we're invigorated, ready to go. And then like now you turn around and you're the seasoned old guy in the room. And you're like, when did that happen? A little less hair, maybe a little grays in the side and a little extra tonnage around the middle. And there we are. Now we're the old guys in the room.
Seasoned people, seasoned. Not so. Yeah. So I actually had a nice conversation with my former boss from the Red Cross days, when I worked for the International Federation of Red Crescent Societies. I'll say this: he's a little bit older than I am, and he has been around. And it's one of those things. It's nice. I think that age does not necessarily translate into wisdom. So I will say that. And at the same time, I think there's a lot of things when I spoke to him, and that podcast again is also available on the network, and just listening to that is really apt. And we were talking about this moments before this, about how, we tend to look at things on the surface. This is what's in front of us, but sometimes we don't see what's behind things that are happening. What are the forces at play there? And also listening to everything, as he put it, everything has a before, everything has a history associated with it. And the example that Michael Stone was my former boss. And he's actually president of the Alumni Association of the IFRC. And he talked about, how if we look historically, that the roots of that conflict in former Yugoslavia stretch back to the Battle of Kosovo Polja, Kosovo in 1398. So it goes back very far. Now there's modern antecedents as well, but anyway.
I read a book that you recommended to me on the Balkans, and it's about 18 inches thick.
Is this the one by Misha Glenny?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like, but it was good. It was good. It was definitely not light reading, that's for sure. And more.
No, I never assign light reading. My light reading on my nightstand right now is Raven Rock.
Oh, Raven Rock is awesome.
Yeah, it's people read they read fiction just to I read doomsday stuff. So 5 days at Memorial during the middle of the pandemic. Some stuff that's uplifting for me.
See, but the interesting thing, going back to bring this to our conversation today, is those books explain why that if we lean forward and nothing happens, a lot of it has to do with our planning processes and what our successes, right? And these nothing happen events truly are because we do what we're doing and behind the scenes. We're doing all this pre-planning. Because if we didn't do all this pre-planning, I'm not going to say that the parade route would go sideways, but there's a high probability that the parade route would go sideways, right? Because if you think about planning for like the Macy's parade for for Thanksgiving, or the Pasadena parade, the Rose Parade, before the Rose Bowl, these are long parades with lots of floats and moving pieces, and the kids that are marching in the parade practice making those turns with the bands, right? And they practice for hours to make those turns with the bands. And the people that are bringing the floats for the Macy's Day Parade practice making those turns with the floats without the floats being in their hands. And so all this practice goes into it, so it looks seamless when the parades occur. All right.
Yeah.
And if you don't do these things beforehand, right, it's not going to be seamless. And our job as emergency managers, when we're looking at these planned events, is to make it so it doesn't look like anything was planned. To make it look like behind as the the behind the stage thing in a Broadway play, right? All the stuff that's happening behind the stage that's going on, with the curtains going up and down and all this kind of stuff. And one last thing on that, and then I'll leave it to you to end us out. And I was watching this video the other day, and it was I think it was, I'm not sure where the show was. I don't know if it was Broadway or not, but there was the girl was behind the scenes, and there was an Elsa, live Elsa, I guess it's Broadway or something like that. And the Elsa character comes up, she turns around, she puts the dress over this hole. The girl puts her hands up, and at the cue, it was like this, and she changes from the one dress to the other magically. And the people in the audience see it as this magical moment of the dress just automatically changing somehow spectacularly. And meanwhile, it's the person behind the scenes that's making that occur. And that's what we do as emergency managers. We stay behind the scenes and we make the magic occur and seamless. And so for the people that are out there enjoying the spectacle of sport, or the parade, or the Christmas tree lighting, all these things that are occurring, that are seamless, that are safe, that go on without a hitch. It's all the planning, it's all the stuff that is occurring behind the scenes. And that's why when nothing happens, it's because that we're there. And I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody who does all that work. Andrew, I'll let you walk us out for the rest of the day, or the rest of the show.
I think your point that you just made about, it's that I think if I can quote the great inventor, Thomas Edison, who actually did his work a couple of miles from where I'm sitting right now, in West Orange, New Jersey. Yay for New Jersey. We're not just about The Sopranos or Bruce Springsteen. Is that it's 99% perspiration and 1% like inspiration. So, he failed, I think he said 10,000 times before he figured out one way to create, to actually use electricity to create light and things like that. So, and I think that is, we plan and we train and we exercise and we go through that cycle many times. And we come to this with the experiences that we have, from law enforcement, EMS, fire, what have you, whatever background. It could be from social services. It could be from the Red Cross. We bring those together in that coordination. We are the orchestrators. We are the ones who practice with that orchestra. And that orchestra is not playing. It's not like they just showed up. Oh, let's play together and let's figure out this tune. We're not a bunch of jazz musicians who come in and jam. We are practicing and playing together and doing that on a regular basis, so that we know when we show up, whether it's in the field or in the EOC, whatever venue that is, whatever location to support or to be the tip of the spear in terms of responding, we know how to actually respond appropriately. And as you said, it's seamless. People are not sort of figuring things out, that the help is there when it's needed to support people, so we can get back bring people back to business, so to speak. And the one thing I do want to point out, and that is it's easy for us to put the training off or put the exercises aside, or let's not make the exercise too dramatic or too difficult. But no, we should make the exercise difficult. We should do it on a day or at a time that's inconvenient, because these things are not going to happen at a time that's convenient for us. And it's not going to be done with all the resources. It's not going to be done on a sunny, beautiful day in Southern California. It's going to be done when there is an atmospheric river, or we have a major wildfire event, or we have multiple things. We have compounding events that are happening. Training at the extreme, like football teams do, like football players or other athletes that do that in extreme situations. They plan for those and drill on those and do those on a regular basis, so they're ready in the moment, that they're not thrown off. And that's what we do. And we are that insurance policy that, is there all the time to be able to respond effectively. So you can't make those capabilities, spin up at the snap of your fingers, so to speak.
Absolutely. Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. It's always a pleasure seeing you, my friend. And everybody, until next time, please, as always, stay safe and stay hydrated.
When the sirens scream out loud, or the voice that breaks the cloud, heads held high when things go wrong, will guide you through its strength and song. Disaster strikes without a sound, chaos reigns but we're around. Public safety in our hands, steady strong in every land. Emergency management.